Dear learners, Assalamu alaikum. In my previous class, I discussed on some poetic techniques used by poets or writers in poetry or writings. In this class, I will read out the poem Out by Robert Frost in your textbook in the unit 8, and the name of the lesson is Human Rights. In your textbook, unit 8, lesson 1, there is a poem Out by Robert Frost. Before listening my lecture, before listening my speech, first you should take this book, this textbook in your hand. Now I am going to read out the poem and to explain the lines. First look, the buzz saw, snarled and rattled in the yard. By this line we come to know that there is a saw. Saw means korat, okay, by which somebody can cut woods, somebody can divide woods. Here the poet tells that there is a saw and the saw creates sounds in time of being operated by somebody, and here the saw with its sound buzz is snarling and rattling. That means at the very first line we see that the saw was snarling and rattling in the yard while it was being operated by somebody or someone. After reading some lines, we will come to know that there is a little boy who was operating the saw. Dear learners, here the saw was being operated, making sounds with snarling and rattling and buzz, and made dust and dropped stop length sticks of wood, and the saw also made dust, that means powder, and dropped stoop length sticks of wood. That means after being operated by somebody or someone, here the saw made dust, powder, and also the saw made sticks of wood like this, okay? Stick of woods which are stoop length. That means the saw was making such woods which were very easy to making fire in stove. Stove means what? Oven, chula. Then sweet scented stuff and the products which were being made by the saw were sweet scented. That means the products, stuff means products, goods were with good smell. Okay. Scent means smell. Okay. Then when the bridge drew across it. And here the poet also tells that these things were happening in such a time, such a period when breeze means a gentle wind. That means Shantobayu. The when the bridge drew across it, that means the environment with bridge, gentle wind. And then come, and from there those that lifted eyes could count 5 mountain ranges, one behind the other, under the sun set far into Vermont. Dear learners, the place where the saw was being operated by somebody or someone, it is such a place from where anybody can see and can count 5 mountain ranges if he lifts his eyes. Okay, and the mountain ranges were one after another, one behind the other, under the sunset far into Vermont. Vermont is a place in New England, United States. That means from the working place anybody could see the mountain ranges in Vermont, and he also could count the mountains. Okay, here the poet gave the setting. Then come and saw snarled and rattled, as it ran light or had to bear a load. Here the second line is repeated again. The words of the first line are repeated, and saw snarled and rattled, Here the poet used onomatopoeia, the formation of words from sounds. Okay? And these sounds of snarling and rattling are of the saw. Here the poetic technique onomatopoeia is used in the line, the saw snarled and rattled, and it ran light or had to bear a load. Okay, dear learners, here this word is about the saw. Here the saw was being operated, that means somebody was operating the saw, and the saw was running rapidly, and there was a load also upon the saw, and nothing happened. Kichui ghoteni. Okay, when somebody was operating the saw, there was nothing to happen. Day was all but dawn. That means the day was fine, the day was peaceful. Then come to the next line. Call it a day I wish they might have said, to please the boy by giving him the half hour that a boy counts so much when saved from work. Here look one thing, up to line number 9 we did not see any first person, but coming to line number 10 we see that there is a first person I used by the poet. Call it a day, I wish they might have said, to please the boy by giving him the half hour that a boy counts so much when saved from work. From this line we come to realize that the saw was being operated by a little boy, and here the poet wished they might have said to please the boy by giving him the half hour that a boy counts so much when sick from work. Here the poet wants to tell that he would be pleased if the old man, if the man who were also working with the little boy, who were also working near the little boy, gave a break to the boy, that means a free time to the boy for taking rest or for gaining peace. Okay, here the boy was working without any break, and to see this situation the poet became very sad, and he told that he would be very glad if the boy was released from his work, his difficult work for some time. Dear learners, from these lines we see that here a little boy is working. Then here is the entry of the sister of the little boy. His sister stood beside him in her apron to tell them supper. In this line or in this sentence we see that the sister of the boy came and he was standing beside the boy, and he was speaking, he was telling about the supper. That means here the sister of the boy came to call the boy for taking his supper. Then come at the word the saw, as if to probe, saws knew what supper meant, leaped out at the boy's hand and seemed to leap. He must have given the hand. Dear learners, in these lines we see Robert Frost to use personification. Here the statement is about saw, okay, and from these lines we come to realize that, we come to know that the sister of the little boy came to call the boy for taking supper, and In the meantime, here the poet tells that the saw, Korat, the saw also knew what the supper was. That means a Korat, a saw is not a person, a saw is a thing. It can't tell, it can't realize anything, it can't know anything. But the poet here showed that after the telling of the sister of the boy about supper, the saw realized, the saw understood, the saw knew what the supper was. Here the thing saw is given the form of human quality, the form of a person, and that means the saw here is personified. Okay, that means here the poet used the technique of personification. Okay, by using the knowledge of the saw about supper. Line is look as if to prove saws knew what supper meant. That means এখানে বলা হচ্ছে যে I am telling in Bangla for this line. এখানে বলা হচ্ছে যে কি মেয়েটি বলল যে কি মেয়েটি আসলো, তার ভাইয়ের পাশে দাঁড়ালো এবং কি করলো, এই রাতের খাবারের কথা বলল। কিন্তু পাশাপাশি কি ওই যে করাত দিয়ে কাজ করতেছিল ছেলেটা, কবি বলতে চাচ্ছেন যে কি এই করাতটাও শুনে গেছে যে কি ছেলেটিকে কি করতে আসলো, রাতের খাবারের জন্য ডাকতে আসলো। And here what is the supper of the saw? Here the hand of the boy is the supper of the saw. That means here next line, and as if to probe saws knew what supper mean, leaped out at the boy's hand and seemed to leap. He must have given the hand. After hearing the supper from the sister of the boy, the saw leaped at the boy's hand and it seemed to leap at the boy's hand. Here the poet is telling that the saw jumped over the hand of the boy, and the hand of the boy was divided. It was on the point of spilling from his body, his hand. Okay, leaped out at the boy's hand or seemed to leap. He must have given the hand. That means the boy had to give his hand to the saw, মানে তার হাতকে ছেলেটি করাতটাকে দিয়ে ফেলতে হয়েছে। However it was, neither refused the meeting. That means when the saw leaped, the saw jumped over the hand of the boy, there is a meeting, there is a contact between the saw. Suppose it is saw, it jumped over my hand. That means there is a contact between my hand and this korat, this saw. Okay, so what it will happen when the meeting between a saw and a hand will take place? Neither refused the meeting, but the hand করাত তো ঠিকই থাকবে, হাতের কি অবস্থা হবে? ওকে, the karat, the saw will be all right, but the hand will not be all right. Okay, dear learners, the boy's first outcry was a rueful laugh as he swung toward them, holding up the hand half in appeal but half as if to keep the life from spilling. From this line we can come to realize that something dangerous happened for the boy. There was a meeting between the saw, the karat and the boy, and something dangerous happened. The boy started to shout. Okay, outcry means noise. Okay, the boy started to make noise, and his first noise was a sorrowful laugh. Then the boy was tossing his hand, he swung toward them, holding up the hand. That means he was swinging his hand, দোল খাওয়াচ্ছিল. He was tossing his hand towards the men who were also working beside him, and half in appeal but half as if to keep life from spilling. He was asking for help, and he was asking for saving his life, for saving his hand from spilling. Spilling means dropping, ঝরে পড়া. That means he was searching help for his life. Then the boy saw all since he was old enough to know big boy doing a man's work. Though a child at heart, he saw all spoiled. Then at that situation, the boy was looking around him. He was watching that all the persons around him were old enough, but he was a little child. That means the work he was doing was not perfect for him. It was an old man's work, and he also saw that everything was spoiled. Then, don't let him cut my hand off. The doctor, when he comes, don't let him, sister. So, but the hand was gone already. Then the doctor came, and he became afraid of seeing the doctor. He was telling his sister that he was telling his sister not to allow the doctor to cut off his hand, and he also saw that everything was finished, everything was spoiled. Then the doctor put him in the dark of ether. In this line, if we explain this line, we will know that the doctor came and kept him in the dark of clean sky. He lay and puffed his lips out with his breath. That means the doctor led the boy to lie for lying, and he was looking for his breath, and the doctor also puffed his lips. That means, okay, then And then the watcher at his pulse took fright. The boy is no more. From this line, we can come to realize that the boy is no more. The man who was watching his pulse, that means this. The man who was watching his pulse became afraid. That means the boy was no more. No one believed. They listened at his heart. That means কেউ বিশ্বাস করেনি. They listened at his heart. That means they knew about his heart. Little less nothing, and that ended it. No more to build on there, and they, since they were not the one that turned to their affairs. Dear learners, from this line we can come to understand that after the death of the boy, here one thing remember, the boy is no more. Okay, and after the death of the boy, nobody was seen to become set. Everybody returned the works. Okay, all the people, all the men present there returned to their works, because this event was not strange. This event was not a new event. Such events were happening every day. Okay, for this reason nobody became strange because of the death of the boy. That means the death of the boy did not could not attract all the people, all the working people present there. Dear learners, in this class I discussed the poem Out by Robert Frost. Here I did not explain all the lines. I did not take the class by explaining line by lines. Here I read out some lines and explained them together. I think you will listen to my lecture attentively and you will understand the story of the poem. This is the short story of the poem about the poem. A boy was working with a saw. He was operating a saw. He was making what? He was making stoop length woods. Okay, and there is also a setting of New England, and we also see that the sister of the boy came to the boy while he was working. She stood beside the boy. She called the boy for taking his supper. Meanwhile, the saw with which the boy was working jumped over the hand of the boy, and the boy had to give his hand. And then doctor came, and the boy became afraid of seeing the doctor. He told his sister not to allow the doctor for cutting his hand, and after cutting his hand, the boy died. And after the death of the boy, it was also seen that it was not a strange event. Nobody was seen to become upset, to become sad. And it is also a It is also seen that it was a typical death of a boy of a normal family. Dear learners, here the boy tried to show the violation of human rights. Okay, and the poet also tried to raise awareness against child labor, and there is also a historical context of this poem out. A friend of the poet Robert Frost lost his son after the death of the son of his friend. He became ready to compose this poem. In this poem, the poet used these techniques: personification, alliteration, onomatopoeia, symbol. Okay, I think you will listen to my lecture attentively. In my next class, I will be present again with different other topics. Till then, Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.